Train, Eat, Think, episode 6. What are the best exercises?
We're back. What are the best exercises? What's optimal? Barbells versus machines. Apparently, barbells they're gonna go extinct. They're not going to be in gyms over the next 20 years, and machines are then the next best thing since sliced bread. So, yeah, we're going to break it all down for everyone today. Well, what are we looking for when it comes to picking exercises and things that you need to consider? Well, it's going to be a good one. This.
I'm really excited to get into this one. There's a lot of records to be set straight. There's a lot of beef, pardon the pun, a lot of beef around, what's the best. And, as we've said on the set of podcasts that we've already recorded in this space, we're going to present good factual information. We're not going to go too much to one side or to the other. We're going to present what we've got, which is great experience. Francis and I have spoken at length on spaces which we had on Twitter before we started recording the podcasts. And the great thing is that Francis comes from a powerlifting background, so he's got the big three. He's transitioned across to doing bodybuilding. I've come from the space where a lot of the work I've done has been on machines. So we've got that right good balance, and really, really excited again to get in and chat about this, Francis.
Yeah, and I think, as you say there, mate, having that background in powerlifting myself, and obviously now, in competitive bodybuilding, and with yourself with the experience of bodybuilding that you've had over the last 10 plus years, we're not coming at it from a place of dogma, or we're not trying to feed people bullshit. I think there is a case or a time and a place for a lot of exercises. There is no absolute one size fits all. And I blame TikTok and Instagram for a lot of this shite. I think it's one of the reasons why we want to do a podcast is more long form content, delving into the weeds, because the problem now with social media, TikTok, Instagram, it's a 10-second reel showing you some bullshit exercise which is going to explode your lats to new levels, the best exercise for lats, and they show you some Keenan flaps where someone he's attached to a cable system just doing some shite, and it grabs the attention, it grabs you in, it hooks the new generation. So we've got a younger generation of lifters. They're not doing pull-ups and barbell rows anymore or deadlifts. They're sat on Keenan flaps and doing single arm pull downs. Now, not that that's just single arm pull downs are a bad exercise. It's just we're going in that direction of the search of optimal. And then we're forgetting about some, bread and butter fundamentals, stuff that does work when it's implemented correctly. So, yeah, I'll go off on a tangent bit about some of the bollocks on TikTok.
You make a great point there, bread and butter. One of the things I like to talk about is meat and veg. We talk about our meat, veg and potatoes, and we can relate that as well to exercises. And there are absolutely meat and veg exercises. They're out there. We all know them. They've been carried out for time immemorial. Those guys that we can still learn from that lifted in the 70s and the 80s. Has it got a little bit better? Well, of course it has. There are more, for example, machines, but there's still a lot of place for using different modalities. And depending where your skill set may be, depending on what you may even have access to, not everybody is going to be blessed that maybe they stay in a large city that has maybe 30, 40 gyms in a like a block. You might be a little bit more rural. You could be working offshore, having your own home gym that you've got enough to get by. And there's been a lot of good physiques built in spaces. And I think that's one of the things I'd really like everyone to take from what we're going to get deep into on this podcast, Francis, which is you can be a good workman, and a bad workman blames the tools. But if you can learn to be a good workman, you can make the tools that you've got at your disposal work for you and build a physique. It doesn't matter what that is, whether it's exercise X or Y. I'm not going to get into the specifics now. We will get into it, but you can make things, even if you don't have a lot of weight, a lot of plates, there's things that we can do that helps increase the intensity a little bit. So what it is it's becoming skilled and understanding what works for you, but also becoming skilled in the terms of being able to use something if that's all you've got access to.
100%, mate. I think if we look at some of the best physiques that have been built over the last 50 to 100 years, you know, even some of the old school like strongmen, you know, like Eugene Sandow and all this, like when they some of their physiques, like, you know, obviously that they're not to the caliber of, you know, some of the athletes today, but you can see that they built a good standard of muscle tissue for like basic equipment. And then you go through the golden age, the silver era of bodybuilding, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. You know, come on, look at some of those physiques, like all built off bread and butter movements. And, you know, even going through the 90s, you know, when Dorian was out and we had Flex Wheeler, you know, all the 90s crew, some great physiques. A lot of it was all built, bread and butter, no nonsense stuff. Now, that's not to say, you know, the new school of bodybuilders today of, you know, the machines are useless. Of course not. It's just to say that when people are saying that barbells and free weights are sort of like they're just, what's the word they use? Vaulted. That's the one. That's the classic on TikTok. Vaulted. Barbells and dumbbells are vaulted. You know, it's like, come on, like we've been doing this stuff for a long time. They do work. They do have the place. And again, I just want to sort of avoid that sort of dogma with things. And you know, there is some real benefits of that, the old school free weight stuff, and there's lots of benefits of machine based stuff. And we're going to dive in now into, you know, some of the nuances between both barbells, free weights, cables, and machines, and where they have the place, because it isn't black or white. There is a lot of sort of grey matter and middle ground with this. You know, I know you share the same sentiment with it as well.
I mean, absolutely. Using myself as an example, I used to squat and barbell squat a lot. I really enjoy a barbell squat. It's hard. One of the things we're going to talk about as part of today's content, Francis, is enjoyment. And there's some sort of maybe sadistic enjoyment, you know, about being under 3, 4, 5 plates aside when you're squatting. Safely, I might add, you know, you've got the pins there. I have failed with 3 plates on my back, 4 plates on my back. And these are the things that there used to be a saying that puts hairs on your chest. But you learn to dig deep because you know that you're in a spot where you need to work really hard. Now, sadly, my SI joint doesn't allow me to do barbell squats anymore. So that's where I've pivoted across to things like, again, that we'll get into today, pendulum, hack squat, good old-fashioned leg press. But again, what I'm trying to sort of show there is there's many ways and many different tools and approaches, many ways to skin a cat, basically.
Yeah, and I built the lion's share of my muscle tissue off using free weights. I started off in a spit and sawdust style gym in the middle of Liverpool. I was in there for 5 years. It was a gym the size of 2 living rooms put together. It stunk of blood, BO, shite, coffee. You can picture the smell. Just a proper old school gym, right? And it had dumbbells up to like 200 pounds, barbells, rusty plates. It had a hack squat and a leg press and a leg extension and a sort of cable system. It had nothing else, nothing fancy at all, mate. I was in there for 5 years and I built a tremendous base in there before moving to another gym. I still done a lot of the basic movements when I did move gyms, but I built a good amount of muscle tissue just doing the basics. Your bench presses, your squats, pull-ups, deadlifts, barbell rows, shoulder presses with dumbbells, one arm rows. I still do a lot of that stuff today. But I sprinkle in some machines because I've obviously upped me training skill and my acquisition of things and understand where it's got its place. But don't ever sniff your nose up at some of the basics because they work tremendously well.
And that's the thing, you know, you just never know what gym that you could potentially land in. And if you're upskilling, it means that it doesn't matter where you go or where you train. What you understand is the mechanics of how to lift, of how to hit the target muscle that you want to train. You know, you've said there, for example, a shoulder press. You know we can do that with a machine. We can do it with dumbbells. We can do it with a Smith machine as well. So there's so many different ways that you can hit the target muscle. And what to remember is as well, your muscles don't know what you've used. Your muscles know tension and how close you're pushing in terms of your proximity to failure and what you're lifting. And again, if you're in a facility that's maybe not your own and you're having to lift a little bit lighter because there's not as many plates or as many options, again, another skill to have is, well, how do I make that lift replicate and feel harder than when I would be in my own gym, so to speak? So I think as we mentioned, it's just about how you skill yourself so that you can make your way around. And as you develop in your lifting journey, you'll find things that you sort of naturally gravitate towards. If you can stay away from injuries, you'll be like, yeah, that works for me. I found it works for me. Again, I enjoy it. Not that you should enjoy absolutely everything. There's going to be things that you don't enjoy training over time, and that might be, might start with like, I don't like training arms. I think that's something I've seen quite a lot online. People kind of get bored on arm training, which is fair, at the end of the day. But it's just about finding and honing in then in things that maybe become your strong points. And if you've got weaker points, then it's just about trying to find out how you address them.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you saying about building your skill set with movements. Like maybe some of these free weights that they don't offer the stability that some of the machines do. So if you build your sort of base with movements that don't have a lot of stability, when you are in a different gym, or you're in a hotel gym with maybe limited equipment, and again I see this happen all the time with clients. When you've got a base and a good skill set and you've got more tools in the toolbox, you don't get into these gyms and you don't throw your dummies out the pram and you think, oh, I need this perfect single arm pull down, or I need this pendulum squat to get a good quad workout in. Like if you've built a good base and a skill set with quite unstable movements as it is, you can do anything. So I think that is an important point, and that sets you up massively if you spend the time getting stronger and building that skill set with some free weights, because it will transfer over into the machines and a more stable environment very well. So I think that is definitely an underrated point. But when we talk about the benefits of free weights there, we know how they can be beneficial. What's a case for the machines? Like, what are some good benefits of machines that you've seen used for some people and obviously yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefit of machines is it's a low entry barrier. It takes away a lot of the skill acquisition that we're kind of mentioning there. For me, there's a two-way street, and some people will argue one side of the street, other people argue the other. Should you do machines first, staying safe, all that good stuff, building up your the analogy I like to use is almost like a toddler, learning to sort of crawl, then learning to walk, and then obviously toddlers love to run as soon as they can walk, kind of thing. And for me, there's no difference there. It's a very real and applicable analogy. Getting on the free machines, the machines, and working on the stability that you've got there, the safety that it offers you, and then as well sprinkling in some of the free weights so that you're not lost and also able to better connect or find out if it's an exercise that you do connect better with, or again, maybe you feel better. I'm a big fan of something feeling good. I know it's not the main driver of creating muscle, but I think you should always feel good in a machine. You get on some items and be like, nah, that just doesn't fit me, or it doesn't suit me, or I can't get the bench to the angle, or whatever it may be. So I think for me, for machines, it's use them to sort of build your platform, learning to sort of crawl and walk on them. But again, as you said, it's not black and white. Don't wait too long to introduce yourself to some free weights and have a little bit of a play as well. Don't be scared to venture into the dark parts of the gym.
Yeah, the part that smells of shite. Be careful of that. But I think I agree with what you're saying there about like with machines. They can be an entry barrier for some people because they are a little bit stable. And we've mentioned in the past of meeting a client where they're at. We spoke before about the psychology of a client or the psychology of an individual. some 45-year-old fella who's never been in the gym, you know, he might be a little bit scared of the gym. He might be a little bit more intimidated of those sort of the barbells and the free weights. It happens, you know, you do get people like that. I'm not going to tell him to go in and put a barbell on his back if he's not comfortable. You know, he might benefit from going in. Look, let's take yourself over to the leg press and the leg extension. Let's get some work in there, a little bit more stable, so you can focus on just, you know, the target muscle that we're after, not a lot of stability and coordination demands. And then you can bridge the gap maybe if you want to branch out into some free weights after that. But I think you do have to meet the client where they're at and the psychology of a person, and vice versa. That there might be a 21-year-old kid. He's full of energy, full of confidence, just doesn't care. He just wants to get in there and get stuck in and rip some deadlifts off the floor. Great, I've had it. You know, we'll get him in there. We'll get him in there with safe technique, and we'll get him doing some deadlifts. So again, there's just a great example of, like, it's not black or white. It's what's the individual like in front of you, and what's the specific scenario that you've got on your hands.
Yeah, I mean, you make some great points there, Francis, and I've actually got some sort of real life experience there. One of my clients had a 7-year competitive athlete, had about a 7-year hiatus from the gym. Life takes over, all these things sort of happen. So they contacted me about some coaching and stuff, and I hadn't programmed deadlifts for them, but they decided that they were really good at them back in the day. But 7 years out of the gym, decided to go and stick what they remembered their PB was from back in the day. I'm just going to sort of try and warm up with my PB from back in the day, because that's what I used to lift, and back errored out, didn't like it. You know, so it's not to scaremonger against deadlifts. You know, it's obviously a fantastic exercise. My take is, if you're good at them, have at them and do them. Personally, I don't deadlift, and that always sends the shockwaves. I don't like them. I've never felt comfortable doing them. And one of the things for me is, when you're getting to the point now in terms of where I am and experience-wise, getting to 4 or 5 plates on a deadlift, the time that takes to warm up and do that probably lets me sink about 40 minutes. I almost want to be, you know, most of the way through a training session in 40 minutes. So for me, the risk to reward just isn't there. I wasn't great at them. And I think it's just something to be, you know, sort of wary of. But again, if you feel good doing them and you've got good open hips, you've got that stability and mobility, again, absolutely have at them. But like we're saying, probably through the entirety of this podcast, there are no essential you must do for as I say, for deadlifts. I could probably do 2 or 3 exercises in that time. Now, it's not going to give me, let's say, full body workout, because it's not going to work from my calves all the way right up the posterior chain. You're going to need some tweaks there. So you're going to need like a hip hinge, for example, if you're not going to deadlift. But just to give a sort of flavour and experience that there is no one, you must do this, and if you don't, you're a failure.
That's the beauty of this, mate, isn't it? That we're right into a sort of hot topic, like, because the flip side of that, I love deadlifts. I'm deadlifts' biggest fan. I will never take them out of my program, because they're my favourite exercise in the gym. And as me and you here on different sides of the fence on an exercise, they don't work for you, but I love them. I don't care if it takes me however long to go in. I'll warm up 30, 40 minutes. I just love pulling my 5 plates, whatever, off the floor. I absolutely love it. It gets me out of bed. And I never had any injuries with them. Touch wood, been doing them for 15, 16 years. You know, spent the time to perfect the technique from the days in powerlifting. When I first come into the gym, I was attracted to them. I just loved it. I just love getting better at them. And, you know, for me, they serve a good purpose to my physique. I'd say my posterior is a strong point, and I put that down to just mastering deadlifts, Romanian deadlifts, and just being obsessed with getting better at them. They've worked for me. Now, is that for everybody? No, absolutely not. There's some people who, for whatever reason, every time they try deadlifts, they just get hurt. Now, if technique is fine and load management and programming and all that stuff is taken care of, and they still continue to keep getting hurt, at some point, those people, they are better finding different exercises. If they've tried to check all the boxes first and don't just blame the exercise, if it's genuinely not for you, by all means, you go and do a different exercise, because staying pain free and staying in the game is huge with exercise selection. But I just think that's good, mate, isn't it? It's good to show an example there of both me and you, like completely different personal takes and uses for deadlifts.
I'm just blocking Francis here on Twitter. I don't agree with.
Yeah, I'm blocking you because you don't deadlift. Can't have that.
This is a great thing. I mean, your wordage there is perfect. An example of a fantastic use case. I like them. I'm good at them. I'm strong at them. They make me feel good. They give me a purpose. They give me reason. All good reasons why you should deadlift. And absolutely, they should be in there. But as you've said, if people are consistently getting injured, it doesn't necessarily be, there's no fault or no blame. It just might be that you're not built for them. You just need to choose something else. And that's the great thing about us, Francis. We can have adult conversations, and we know that there's nothing black or white here. There's many different ways to skin a cat, as I've already mentioned. And that's probably the best fodder for it. You can build a back. Arguably, for me, my strongest body part is my back. It's one of the things that's really grown from when I've started in my journey. For me, that's grown from just bog standard plate loaded machine rows is one of the things I've always done. I'm not going to say that I invented seal rows or dumbbell chest supported rows, but I actually did invent seal rows, and I've been doing them for many, many years. And that just came from actually injuring my back. And it was just before the explosion of videos on social media. I am kind of joking that I invented them, but I don't remember seeing them somewhere. It's just something I come up with in the gym one day, and I was thinking, why not get a bench and sit on it? You've got chest supported. We didn't have a T-bar row at that point in time, a chest supported one, unfortunately. It was the sort of, the ones where you would load it and you would sort of load it, but there was no chest support element. So it's just things like that, where you're sort of trying to find your way and see what body parts are growing. But there's no real, you must do this. So when I say there's no real right or wrong, what we're talking about there is works absolutely perfectly for Francis, something he enjoys. Me personally, I'd rather go up the road than deadlift.
We'll have to call that exercise you did the row there, Jesus rows or Jesus flaps. That'll be the one. Well, yeah, I think when we're picking exercises, I think there's a couple of like bullet points that I'd be looking at. I think if we go through a couple of them now, I think it'll help people sort of distinguish, like, well, what are you looking for? What are some of the big talking points for an exercise? And I think number one is enjoyment, as we just said there. If you don't enjoy what you're doing, we're thinking about, it's not what are you going to get out of a training cycle for the next 3-4 weeks? What are we going to get out of the next 3-4 years? Are you going to be still excited 5-10 years down the line? We want to do exercises that we genuinely do love to do. Same with me there with deadlifts. I've been obsessed with them since the start. I'm still 15, 16 years in, and I still get excited and get nervous on deadlift day. I love that feeling. And I want exercises that give me that feeling, that keeps me coming back for more. So you have to have exercises, and you have to sprinkle things in that you enjoy to do.
I mean, you've made a fantastic point there. We need to be looking at years down the road and what we can do, and getting excited about our training. There are some things that we're going to do. There are some exercises out there where you'll be like, yeah, I don't really feel that. But the importance is to try and find those that do work. And there'll be some stumbling blocks there. I think if we bring some sort of reality to that and say, not everything that we're going to do is going to absolutely light us up and be like, take us back and do that. But some of the things we're going to do are going to be for the greater good. But obviously, if we can try and enjoy as much as we can, and making sure that we're getting the development through things like stability, being able to push something safely in terms of proximity to failure, so that you're failing and it's the muscle that's failing before you start bringing in sort of other body parts and jerking violently kind of thing. So I think it's really important to find that balance that, yep, absolutely, you should enjoy it, enjoy what you do, so that it doesn't feel like a chore having to go to the gym. One of the things, again, Francis, that we've spoken about is that mindset and how we feel about things. We get to go to the gym, that we live in a privileged world, first world privilege, that we can go to the gym, and it's one of the things that we want to add to that, is to get some element of enjoyment and progression from it.
Absolutely. The gym should be one of the highlights of your day. And again, enjoying going in there and getting stuck in with your program that you're running, your exercises that you're doing. And we're not soft. We're not saying that you're not going to walk in the gym every single session and it's going to be, oh, can't wait to train. Like it's going to happen. Like we're all, 15 years in the game with being there. But for the most part, you should be, excited to get in there and sort of blow off some steam and get stuck in. And I think that's where a lot of the optimal crowd falls down, is that like they make training a headache. It's more like a science experiment and more of a headache, and you put more barriers for people instead of just letting people fucking enjoy the gym and enjoy the training, because that's what it is there for. If we can enjoy it and get the results out of it, you marry them two together, great. Not just coming in with some spreadsheet with optimal key and flaps into this movement. It's just shite. I've got no time for that.
So if we jump into then, what we'd sort of start looking at for, let's say we were putting together a list of exercises, even if we pick one each and say this is what we go for. I think we done this in the space before. Let's cover off things like stability, how we can push to failure safely. If we've got a training partner, somebody that can help us, all the better. Just don't touch the bar. But yeah, just things like that.
Yeah, I think that after enjoyment, I think one of the big things you just touched on there would be when you pick an exercise, if we can get a good movement that allows the target muscle to be the limiting factor, and you can push there to failure or close to failure very safely in a decently stable environment, and it's going to be the target muscle that's going to be nailed. That ticks the box for a very, very good exercise in my eyes. So, if you just take something like a hack squat or a pendulum squat or a leg press versus a barbell squat, this is the classic example. With a barbell squats are not bad. We're not saying that at all. They're a great exercise. But what can be a limitation for some people with that is it's not the quads failing first. It's the lower back, the core, or the hips. That's failing first. So then they're failing first, and the quads still might have 2 or 3 reps left in the tank. They've got more juice to squeeze out, more tension that could be had. Whereas if you're on a pendulum or a hack or a leg press and you want the biggest quads possible, and we want the most tension to the quads, again, pushing your quads to all-out failure in absence of the hips or the lower back getting involved, it just allows us to tick that box for max quad stimulus without, again, being limited by your lower back and hips. So that's just an example of what we're looking for. But picking an exercise which allows the target muscle to actually be the limitation, that's a big one.
I'm just starting the petition here to rename the pendulum to be called the Humbler.
The Humbler. I think it's the hardest one out of the 3. Like if you got a pendulum, a hack squat, and a leg press, that pendulum, it's brutal. The Humbler for good reason.
Just no hiding place, and that's one of the good things where you'll see examples out there of guys that are doing 4 or 5 or 6 plates on a squat, barbell squat, for example, moving across to the pendulum. It's maybe 2 plates, 3 plates maximum. And that's no disrespect at all, but what we're doing there is paying respect to how difficult the pendulum is. I had a target myself, and it took me nearly 3 years to do 4 plates on the pendulum that we had in my gym that's recently been changed. So when that got changed, I had to not start again, but you're finding new groove with a different machine. But definitely one of the best for me exercises. It doesn't give any, pain into my lower back when you're doing it right. You can get basically collapse. You can get fully down into the bottom. You're closing the angle, getting your glutes almost to touch your calves. And there's not a lot of examples or machines out there that could actually do that. even people that may struggle doing that on a barbell squat, you know, you've got the old ass to grass, so it doesn't count. We could go into, you know, how that's partly mobility, you know, like dorsiflexion of the ankle, things like that. But what happens when you go on the pendulum is a lot of that does get relieved for you, and you can really get down into the depths of where you need to be. You know, as I say, closing the angle, getting plenty of power, and pushing out with the quads, a little bit the glutes as well, and you know, starting to build that up. For me, pendulum's right up there.
Pendulum also ticks the box for another good exercise for anthropometry wise. That's what you're looking for when you're picking another exercise. Is does this exercise fit your structure, your biomechanics, your anthropometry? And I've never really met anyone who can't get in a pendulum and get decent knee flexion and nail the quads, because of the way that the machine is designed. You've got that full back support, which on most pendulums, it goes from all the way to the top of your neck, all the way to the base of your spine. You have that full back support. And the way the pendulum, it arcs in, it pendulums in, you can get very, very good knee flexion. So anthropometry wise, like there's no limitations with, for most people with ankle mobility and hip mobility with the pendulum, that you might have with a barbell back squat. Even some hack squats for some people, depending on the foot placement of the pad, they can be pretty nasty for people to get depth on, because of the foot position. It's a little bit too high, a little bit too aggressive for people. But with a pendulum, especially if you can change the foot pad as well, if you see those pendulums where you can change those, they're absolute money. Them, you can slide it forward, you can slide it back. Pendulum, it fits a lot of people's anthropometry, so it ticks the box. You can nail the quads in absence of other muscles getting involved. Anthropometry wise, it's great, safe. So yeah, the pendulum squat, although it's a humbler, it's definitely one of the best. I'd probably put it as the number one quad exercise. Would you? That's what I pick.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree for that particular, you know, element of hitting the quads. You know, we'll touch on leg extension at one point later, when we're talking about, you know, fully extending the quads out. But I think everybody who doesn't have a pendulum, either at home or in the gym, is probably shouting at us saying, "Going to shut up and move on to the next exercise."
That's the thing with pendulums, that they are quite rare, but more gyms are getting them. I will say over the last couple of years, I've had more clients who've had access to a pendulum. I remember the first couple of years of coaching, nobody had one. It was like a unicorn. You couldn't find them. And now more gyms are starting to get them. So that is a plus. It is a positive.
So we've got hack squats in there as well. So, you know, obviously a fantastic machine, plate loaded. Again, allows you to get great stability. You can do it safely, because a lot of them have got, you know, you can sort of throw the bars out when you're finished, the safety bars, and they're going to catch you. So where would you see that fitting in terms of programming, Francis?
Yeah, I love both pendulums and both hack squats. Another good thing with those movements, you know, another what we're looking for with exercises, you've got a long runway to progress them. You're not going to run out of plates for the pendulum, no chance. And you know, even for most hack squats, you know, it's the loadability of it over time to allow overload to take place. It ticks the boxes. So for me, yeah, I just think it's a flip of a coin, really, whether you prefer hack squats or pendulum squats. I just think that they're just both fantastic exercises. And then that takes us into like the leg press as well. Like you can hold down a leg press, like you've got a 45-degree leg press, the pivot leg press. You can do leg press single leg, which I know you're a big, massive fan of. I think leg press is absolutely fantastic for quads. It gets looked down on, and people turn their nose up at it so much. And I think it's because people do it wrong. And it's an exercise that you see everybody in the gym, they're loading up 8, 9, 10 plates aside. They're moving it down about 2 or 3 inches. It gets a lot of hate because it's the way most people do it is wrong. But if you do it correctly, you check your ego at the door, you use a load that you can go to as much knee flexion as you can, pain-free. You're really trying to nail the quads. You know, that leg press that you've had 8, 9 plates aside, that soon comes down to 3, 4 maximum. And you're like, oof, what's going on here? But your quads are blowing up. You're not having to load as many plates. But the leg press, fantastic. Top draw quad movements. And I know you're a big fan.
Definitely a big fan. You know, kind of forced into leg press. You know, as I mentioned, I had to take personally barbell squats out. So things like pendulum, hack squat, leg press, absolute staples for me. One thing worth mentioning, you probably want to split like your pendulum and your hack squat out into different rotations of your workout. You're probably going to tax the same muscles doing your hack squat as you would your pendulum. So maybe if you've got a rotation A, maybe that's got pendulum. Depending on your approach, which is something probably we'll get into on another podcast, we've spoken about in our earlier versions or releases. We like to warm up the hamstrings and the quads, a little bit of leg extension, a little bit of seated ham curls or whatever, and then we move on to pendulum, or you would move on to hack squat. So just worth mentioning there, you probably want to separate them into different workouts. But back to the leg press, yeah, I'm a huge fan. Things like as well, very lucky, and where I train, we've got a hip press. Just recently had the Gymlico one added. Again, a humbler. The old press that we had, you could really load it. This one, 2 plates a side. Actually, just recently worked up to 2.5 plates per side, and you're in a set. The quads are absolutely burning. What I really like is the level of control that you've got when you're bringing that back towards yourself, into full flexion. Even just sitting there for a wee tiny second, so you've got that control. You're controlling, the descent, and then you're exploding out. Again, not nuclear force, but some good force out, bringing that back in all the way to failure. Again, failing safely, because if you overcook it and you come down and you don't have anything left to get out the hole, you just drop the machine and it's already got the bars there. So, yeah, a huge fan of single leg press. I sort of stumbled across that because of my injury, and I've managed to work that up. I've actually posted a video of that recently, from 3 plates per side. The last rotation I did with my training partner, we were at 215 kilos a side, so we managed to get up quite decent, and that's coming all the way down. Good control, the old CFRT as I like it, Francis, but a fantastic movement, and one, to be honest, my legs absolutely exploded, because you've got, as we've mentioned, control on the target muscle. You're not getting the joints involved, you're controlling it, and you're exploding, and it's nothing but target tissue until you hit failure or close to failure.
Yeah, I think the quads respond really, really well to that style of training, mate. The continuous repetitions, moderate loads, moderate reps, not trying to just heave whole weight. I think the quads really respond well to that. Again, mine have came on tremendously over the last sort of 18 months with that approach as well. And getting more out of less weight, again, I think I'll always take that on a leg press. I don't want to be loading 8-9 plates aside. If I can get the most out of 4 or 5 aside, if I can nail my quads with that, I'm going to do that. I don't want to be revacking 9 plates aside at the end of a leg press. So if I can get more out of less, I'll definitely do that. So I think we've toasted quads, mate. So if you wanted to, let's go to the post area, talk glutes and hams. What would you be looking at? What are some of your favorite exercises there with hams? I know we share the same sentiment on hams, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think I'm coming straight out the gate with seated hamstrings. I don't think there's anything over and above probably where you'd want to start. We'll talk about hinges when we're going RDL and stiff leg, but I'd certainly come out the gate. Again, what we've mentioned on the leg press for hamstring, you can get that control. You're safe. You can be in full control as well of where you're pushing your failure limit to, and probably even get a couple of reps more than you would maybe on a machine, because for example, a leg press machine, because you've got that element of safety built in. Nothing's going to go wrong. It's literally just you and how deep you can dig, how much you can push through the burn, and get good quality controlled reps to failure at your target rep range.
Yeah, seated hamstring curl, absolutely goated in terms of hamstrings, mate. And I know you love the single leg version as well. I'm a big fan of that, doing it one leg at a time. I prefer that than dual leg. I think single leg, you can really get into that stretch and just position your hips just to be pinpoint. And the best thing for me about the seated ham is that because your hamstrings respond very well to being overloaded in that stretch position, you can really stretch out the hamstring while being nice and stable. And you just, again, you go to town on the hamstring. Now, that's not to say the lying hamstring curl is bad, because it's not. The lying hamstring curl, I'm still a big fan of that. You can do that single leg as well. It's just the lying hamstring curl. Gives you a little bit more tension towards the top position. So like when the muscle's fully peak contracted or short. So that's why I do like the seated hamstring curl over the lying hamstring curl. But they're both great. And again, rotation, you can have an A, B, C rotation. You can include seated hamstring curl on 2 of your rotations. It could be dual leg, single leg, and then lying hamstring curl. There's 3 rotations of ham curls, using everything. Perfect.
I think you've been reading my programs, Francis.
Sneaking through the window.
You make fantastic points. You know what we're showing people here is, you know, you've got your pendulum, your hack, and you've got your leg press, you've got your leg extension, seated ham and lying ham, and then you've got your variations within, in terms of, for example, you could have leg extensions as the dual, and then on the next rotation have them as the single, and then rotation C maybe go back to dual again so that you're hitting them. But it really shows you how you can bring together, you know, some really good exercises and place them so that you're getting the maximum sort of stimulus per session, and also in your rotation, so that, again, there's nothing that's, you know, really inherently wrong, but you're just bringing different ways to fatigue. And again, this is what we're saying. Muscle knows tension. Muscle knows you're pushing to fatigue. And what it does is, obviously, it says, oh, I didn't really like what you did to me there, so I'm going to get stronger, which means grow, for the next time that I attempt a single leg extension or, you know, single hamstring curl. And I think as well, it's really good for those types of exercises, because you can address imbalances. There'll always be, I think, in a lot of lifters, you'll be stronger right side dominant or left side dominant. And when you're doing the single leg work, it gives you an opportunity as well, even if it's minute. You know, you could do an extra rep or start with your weaker side, and that determines the reps. And then you maybe add a couple on at the end that's going to help readdress that imbalance.
Yeah, it's just, they're all tools in the toolbox, isn't it? We're not stuck, or we have to use one exercise forever. You can use whatever you want, different days. You know, that's the beauty of programming, mate, isn't it? So I think we've touched on hams, and that ties right into glutes. So in terms of glutes, you know, I think the gluten ham tie-in has got to have some sort of hinge. Yeah. So whether that be, as we spoke about, a deadlift from the floor, a Romanian deadlift, 40-bar degree back extension, these booty builder machines, these glute builder machines, these are all the wave right now. So yeah, what would you go with in terms of like your favorite hinge?
I think for me, favorite hinge, if I had to pick one, is actually the dumbbell RDL or SLDL, stiff leg deadlift. Again, different rotations on different leg days. Personally, I train legs twice a week, so I'm really a big fan of getting into the rotations. But you know, it's learning the different skills. You know, with stiff leg dead, exactly as it says. You know, your legs are a bit straighter, slight bend, but it's a slightly different technique from the RDL, which has got a little bit more bend in the leg. You know, SLDL, you're sort of, I liked your one the other day where you're sort of pushing your bum back, you know, making sure that your back's, you know, iron board straight type of thing. And I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm imagining doing the lift, and my hamstrings are absolutely lighting up. You know, there's absolutely no greater exercise, I don't think, than the RDL. That's the one I would say I enjoy the most.
Yeah, I think for me, it would be, as much as I love deadlifts from the floor, if I was looking for pure glute and ham stimulus, I'm going for a barbell Romanian deadlift for me. Like, I just think it's absolutely top tier, even with the pause in the bottom. Just really control the sensor. At the cue for me is it's chest up, and imagine I'm trying to push me ass towards the wall behind. I seen another great cue on Twitter this week. I was laughing when I seen it. Some fella said, imagine that you're trying to shine a torch out your asshole. And I thought it was great because I was like, aye, that's a good one, that I can see. So, yeah, we'll take that. But yeah, I'd go barbell Romanian deadlift, mate, 100%. That's what I'd pick. And then your poke area is toasted.
Yeah, for glutes, for me, I do like the Smith machine. I like a hip thrust. I know that there's some sort of what's that word? Stigma attached to should you hip thrust in the gym. Throw that out the window. We're all there to train. Just do it instead of getting worried about getting labelled something or other.
Yeah, no one gives a shit whether you're doing a hip thrust or not. Do you know what I mean? I've had you see on the timeline people are saying how you're a man doing a hip thrust. The fact that you're even worried that that someone's looking at you doing a hip thrust, that's your insecurity. I want a big ass, mate, so I'm gonna do my hip thrust. Don't you worry.
Exactly. And obviously a little bit of the abductors and the adductors come in for that, for a bit of tickling as well, the stigma attached to them.
Yeah, that's known as the sus machine on TikTok, mate. The sus machine.
Okay, right.
That's what they call it, yeah.
One of my clients, apparently. One of my clients used to call it the yes and the no machine.
Yeah, that's another one, yeah. Or the good girl, bad girl machine, that's another one as well, yeah. Again, the great machines, the very, very useful. I used the adductor today, great machines.
I mean, if you want to, especially, when we're talking about competitive element to it, doesn't need to have the competitive element. If you want to build a good set of legs, you need to work on what you would call the 3D of your legs, or the 360-degree view. And if you're doing your abductors and adductors on top of your squats and leg press, if it's hack squat, whatever, you're targeting the inside leg and the outside leg, which is important because it's not just, as we're talking here, quad, hamstring, and glute. We are talking about those little add-ons, if you want to call it that, because it just makes your leg look a little bit thicker. And as we're saying, Francis is going to go to stage. If he's standing on stage with somebody that maybe hasn't been as focused on doing abductors or adductors, Francis's legs are going to look that little bit bigger. And that's what it's all about. It's about trying to create the biggest legs that you can, get bang for your buck. At the end of the day, we're all spending a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. Why not get rewarded?
Yeah, 100%, mate. Totally agree. We're not going to talk about calves. We don't train calves. Only joking. Should be training your calf. But for me, I think it's probably the most boring muscle to train. I hate it. I've got to be honest, but they get done. I do a machine toe press, nice and stable. I get the amount of calf stimulus that I need as well. And what I also will say, I get a good amount of calf stimulus from some of my leg presses because my leg press stance is quite low. I get a lot of calf stimulus in that bottom of a leg press. So, your stance on your leg presses and some of your quad compounds can work your calves as well. But yeah, if I was going to pick an isolated calf movement, it would be like a machine toe press on one of those sort of the machine leg press styles. You'll know what I mean. That's what I'd pick.
To just relating that to, we've dropped in a little bit of like placement and stuff. So for toe press, it's probably one of those things you want to do after your leg press, for the reason being you don't want to unload your plates from the leg press. So you can basically say do your leg press, maybe take your rest period, or start your feeler sets for when you're doing toe press, for example, and then you can start loading from there. It's probably a good idea to run them there. Saves you taking all the plates off, maybe having to wait around if you're in a busy gym. Yeah. Obviously, if you're in a home gym, you don't really need to worry about, sort of waiting for something. But
you can do them on that sort of leg press, like where you put the plates either side. But there's another leg press, and you'll know what I mean, where you sort of sit on it and you put the pin in the side. Those types with the big platform, like they're easy, just they're plug and play to do calves on. So I tend to do calves on them, but you can do them on, obviously, a regular leg press.
And the good thing is as well, they're very safe because you don't even need to pop safety bars off. The one I'm thinking in our gym is actually one that you can split into a single leg. You can pop your feet in, and do it from there. You don't even need to take it off of the rack. We've got a machine in our gym that allows us to do calf standing. And I know they get a lot of hate, but I don't mind a seated calf as well. One of the things I've found to help my own calves grow is to work on that being in the bottom and having a little bit of stretch and taking unfortunately, a lot of people when they do calves, it's just that sort of bounce reflex. And I don't know why calves over any other muscle get that treatment. If you can get down into the stretch, take the stretch out of, when I say stretch, but take the tension out of your Achilles and then, come back up. You don't need to go all the way back up onto your toes, right up to the tippy toes, but you can move in that sort of range. And I found them, again, they get a lot of heat, a lot of hate. They don't grow. You grow if you know how to
do. That's what they say nowadays, mate. I think what the argument is, if I'm correct with this one, I think they say is that the seated, it works the soleus. You got the soleus and the gastrocnemius. Right. Now the gastro, it's a biarticulate muscle. That means it crosses two joints. So that would be the ankle and the knee, whereas the soleus just crosses the ankle. So to work the gastroc fully, it needs to be a straight leg position. I think that's what they try and say. But again, if a seated calf raise, again, if it's worked for you and you get results from it, have at it.
I mean, one of the things is when you're lean, which obviously I've been focusing on recently, when you get videos taken, you literally see the muscle move. Now, obviously, I can't say that it's definitely 100% fully engaging my gastroc from bottom to top, but I can see the muscle moving, and obviously over time, I'm getting stronger and getting bigger. Again, it's not the only one that's in the arsenal. We're talking here about the rotations, so we're going around different rotations, and we're using different elements to get different progressions, all in the name of how do we grow progressively overload, getting the tissue under the mechanical tension that we talk about. And that's what it's all about. Again, mentioned earlier, the body knows tension. The body knows tension, and that's what you're aiming for. It might not be every exercise, might not be 100% this because showed up this on an EMG or whatever. Those aren't the gold standard either, truth be told. EMGs do show muscle activation. Yes, they absolutely do. There's no denying that. But because they're showing muscle activation, that doesn't necessarily correlate to hypertrophy and gains.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to make, Peter. That training is not done in the lab. That's very, very important, and people do miss the boat with that one. We are all not. Have they got studies on someone who's trained for 10 plus years, who's monitored diet, training, recovery, everything for 10 years straight, can train to absolute failure with good technique? All these studies that are going on inside of these labs, what is failure to them? Do they know how to train? Do they know how to train the muscle accurately to failure? And then they're pulling off this data of EMG studies and for people who've lifted for 3 months and telling you, this is gospel, you've got to train like this. That is the big flaw of some of the science and the TikTok bros and the science-based bros, is that they miss a big fundamental piece of what actually works in practice. What is working in the trenches, what has worked for years, what continues to work. Don't miss that. That is some of the best evidence that you can get, and we don't need a science lab for that.
I think it's missed more than it's ever been. Sometimes you're making posts online and it's like some people can't wait for the gotcha moment that there was this study. Obviously, like we're both certified. We understand things. We know that there are some things that can be gained. We know as well that there's a lot of things that the bros discovered in 1984 that are now just being proven. Hello, creatine. Creatine's been out for so long, but it's now just getting put into things like ketchup and, it's becoming proper mainstream now. And I know that that's not an exercise, but what I'm saying is there's things out there that has been known in the space for a long time. And when there's guys, like you say, in the trenches, there's guys out there like us working with people to develop their physiques. We know what's working. Why? Because we've walked that walk. we've talked that talk, and we've helped multiple hundreds, maybe even thousands of people get to where they want to be, which is to grow more muscle and lose some body fat. So it's in our best interests to know what helps and what is the best for people.
Yeah, that's a great point there. Like it's 100% in our interest to know what works, because this is our career. This is what we do for a living, so to speak. It's what our credibility and our name is to help people build muscle, lose body fat, get in better shape, improve their life. So if someone comes to me and I'm giving them a load of bullshit and it's hocus pocus shit, which is not working, what's the point? You're coming to me and I'm going to give you some science-based keying and flaps, but nothing happens. At the end of the day, we're in a results-based business. If someone comes to you and they actually implement the plan as you want them to, we're after results here. We're after results, and we know what works. We've seen what works. We continue to keep an open mind, of course, but we won't be distracted by bullshit nonsense, which is then going to downplay some of the fundamentals that we know about good exercise selection. So that's the point we're getting at. But yeah, we've got all the upper body to go to, mate. I think we're probably better saving that for a part 2. I think we probably want to do that, and then we close off just a couple of points about some of the good points that we'd be looking for when it comes to exercise selection. What's some of the big fundamentals, like needs versus wants analysis, that would be going through. Let's say someone's got a weak muscle group. So are you up for that? Should we save upper body muscles for part 2? Probably makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree. Yeah, we know we stop close to an hour. We could probably do like 2-3 hours on some topics
easily.
But yeah, no, that makes absolutely perfect sense. Probably actually better.
Yeah, makes sense. So needs versus wants analysis, like we spoke off air before about this one. So we know when we're picking exercises, we know that we want to enjoy what we're doing. We want the target muscle to be the limiting factor. We want it to fit our structure. But there is going to come a time in a lifter's career, it happens to everybody, where you're going to develop certain strengths and certain weaknesses, things that you like to do. There might have been some things that you've neglected. I'm talking to you, calves. But there will be muscle groups that might be lagging behind. So then if you want to fix that, you have to go, there's a needs versus wants analysis here. As an example, let's say you've got weak hamstrings, right? Someone's got weak hamstrings, quads are quite overpowered, very, very strong, but hams are weak. Okay, so you're going to have to look at your exercise selection on your leg day. There needs to be a little bit more forefront for, hamstring curls, as we mentioned there. Maybe you've never done hip hinges because they don't feel right, or you're a little bit scared. You've always just put them on the back burner. You've always just done your quad work first, and you've always just done some half-hearted lying hamstring curl, 3 sets at the end of a leg day, half-hearted, and that's it. And that's why your hamstrings are lagging. So this is a great example of, look, we need to be coming in. Let's start fresh with hamstring curls, right into a hinge. And you've got to be looking at your exercise selection there, going through a needs versus wants analysis. And it's not something that you might like to do, but if you've got competitive aspirations, or if you want to round out your physique, this is something you're going to have to do.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It always almost irks me how aligned we are. I was going to say balance. It's so important to have balance in your physique. We spoke about abductors and adductors earlier on, adding that, that 3D pop or 360 view. There's no point in you standing from the front, and I don't just mean on a bodybuilding stage, but you stand from the front and it's like, oh, that guy's got fantastic quads, and he turns to the side and there's just no hamstring, no glute to sort of back it up. So one of the things maybe worth mentioning is not only maybe increasing the frequency in terms of, you said 3 sets of lying hams isn't going to be enough. We know that that's not going to be enough to stimulate muscle hypertrophy over a period of time. So you're going to want a little bit more frequency. And maybe that could come in on, for example, your back day, if you set it apart far enough from legs so you're given enough time to recover. Again, it's about finding the frequency and the volume that your muscle will be ready to go again, maybe within 48 to 72 hours. And you could maybe stick it in, for example, some hamstring exercises, start off on your push session or pull session or however you do it, but it's just adding a bit more frequency in to do the hamstrings when they're fresh. Ideally, if you've come off from a rest day because the body's had time to recover, you're going to be super strong right out the bat on that first exercise. And I think as well, it's just important to slide in here, and I know that we're getting to the end of time, but it's really important to slide in. We want to grow everything. We don't want any weak body parts. We want to be big. We want big biceps. We want big triceps. But one of the things we need to accept is there's a realism that we can only push forward one thing at a time. We just can't grow everything at the same rate. And that's why when we're saying here needs and wants, it might be that you need to bring your hamstrings up, as we're saying in this example. And to do that, they're going to need a bit of focus. It doesn't mean that you're not giving any focus to the rest of your body, but I think it's worth mentioning, as much as we want to improve every single thing, we need to give something that's going to take, I don't really know the term, to be honest, but, take the leader flag and be like, I'm going to run with this.
Yeah. Nails it, mate. And that's the thing. If you've got a set of legs and your quads are really overpowering it, if you can't grow your quads now at the same rate as your hams, but your hams are a weak point, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing to bring out that balance of your physique. So if you put your quads on the back burner, you might even drop a little bit of volume on your quad work, just enough to keep them ticking over. And as you mentioned there, a great point about you get your frequency and volume on point. If someone's training legs twice a week, and let's say you've got a nice push-up phase now, you've got 10, 12 months, and your hamstrings are weak. Okay, well, every leg day, we're starting with a hamstring curl. You're coming in fresh. We're getting 2 to 3 sets of ham curls done first when you're fresh twice a week, and then onto a hinge. So your quad work, it's always at the back burner of legs for the next year. But that's what you need. Your quads are strong. Your hams need to come up. So you run that for a year, focusing on hams up front, quality work up front when you're fresh, good exercise selection for what you need. Again, ticking all the boxes that we just went through there. Target muscle being nailed, stability can load over time, needs versus wants analysis for your physique. Golden, good to go.
We've done it again, mate. Again, we could probably keep going, but we've sort of agreed that we'll stop around the hour mark. So, as always, we do include in the footer. If you want to get in contact with Francis or myself, we've got those contact details. We are on Instagram as well as Twitter. Francis's handle is at Coach FHM. Mine is Benjamin Yeezus. We also, as well, want to say a big thanks for all the support, all of the messages. I'm getting screenshots, and Francis is too. We're actually sharing them between each other, truth be told. We're just getting a fantastic outpouring. We love doing this. We're going to keep doing this, and we're going to keep coming with subjects. And it's just to say thank you for the continued support, and anyone that's tuning in. We really do honestly appreciate it.
Yeah, and I echo that massively. Thanks for all the support, all the 5-star ratings we've been getting on Apple and Spotify. All the I think people have got automatic downloads on. We appreciate it massively. I've even had some of the current clients they're sharing it with like people who are new to the gym and saying, "Look, listen to this," and it just puts a big smile on my face. The fact that we're getting out there, helping as many people as we can avoid all the bollocks, mate, isn't it? So.
Absolutely, mate. No bollocks at all.
No bollocks.
We're right down the middle. None of this black or white, and that's going to continue. As Francis and I have said, we're going to be in this for a good couple of years minimum.
Absolutely. Right. So again, appreciate all the support, everyone. Keep an eye out. Part 2 of the exercise selection conversation will be coming next week for upper body. So keep an eye out. Right. Appreciate all the support. I'll speak to you next week.
I'm already buzzing for next week. Thanks, everyone. Chat to you soon.